All right. Well, let's get going. Make sure I've got everything set where it needs to be. Somebody has questions, comments, then hopefully it'll show up in the chat. We'll see what happens, right? So, good evening, everybody. I hope that your week is well, starting off well. There have been a few things that we're working on. So, let's see. Lighting better? Yeah. All right. Uh, yeah. So 4th of July. All right. I hope a lot of you, if not all of you, had a fantastic 4th, enjoyed family, friends, food, festivities. And it wasn't the best weekend that we've experienced. I'd received a call early Saturday morning from my sister. She was really upset, and their house had caught fire, and unfortunately, it was a total loss. Everybody except for one family pet was able to get out, so we're thankful that it wasn't worse than it was. And I've got to say that I'm absolutely amazed at how the community has just kind of stepped up around my sister and her family. So from the bottom of my heart, thank you all for the contributions, the resources, the prayers and positive thoughts that you're sending their way. It's not an easy road ahead. However, they're strong and they'll make it. I'm looking forward to getting back to Shreveport next week to check in with them, see how the progress is going, and hopefully by then we will have found some more permanent solutions for housing for them. Um, I just want to take a moment and say that it really is amazing to see a community come together like that. Not even an hour after I'd made the post, so many people had already reached out. What can we do? Where's it at? Is there a GoFundMe? And it's really lessened the burden and the worry for them. So again, thank you. In my small way of attempting to give back to people, rather than taking the price of my workshop tickets up, I've actually decided that I'm going to just eliminate the price for the general admission tickets. So it's open. Anybody that would like to attend that workshop on Saturday, July 19th, it's going to be absolutely free for a general admission ticket. If you want the VIP with the documents and the other things, yes, you can still buy those. However, it's just going to be a free workshop. I will be requiring a $25 deposit just to hold your seat. Whenever you get there, you check in that day. Guess what? I'll be giving you back that money. So, in essence, it is free. It's just that because of the fact that I don't want people to go over here and take a seat and fill the room and then not come, I want to at least make sure that people are somewhat earnest in the intention of showing up for that event. So that being said, I'm going to repost after this with the updated promotion that the general admission tickets are going to be absolutely free, and thankfully we've got some great sponsors that are coming in. They're going to be providing some resources, some handouts, things like that for the attendees, and I'm really looking forward to putting this together. You see, for the past 10 years, we've been cutting our teeth and learning and sharpening our craft. And I will say that it's not knowledge that I share lightly. It's knowledge that I share freely. I take it very seriously. And with that, when I go to share this knowledge, I just hope that there's somebody in the crowd, no matter if it's a crowd of 2, 10, 20, or 100, that those are the people there with intention to change their lives. I've been extremely blessed in being able to change my life through real estate. And I've seen so many others do the same thing. Well, not all, a lot of people coming from, practically nothing, just like I did. And if you are in a position to to begin your journey in real estate and investing with means, more power to you. There's no fault in that whatsoever. So my thing is, I would enjoy for people to come out, gain the knowledge, and put it into practice. I find a lot of issue with people that are just only students. And I mean only students, as in they'll go and they'll learn and they know what to do. They never take the action. The reason why I have a problem with that is because years ago, I learned that in Bold, it's a sales training to help you become a better realtor. But I think of it as a training to help you become a better person. And, one of the coaches just changed my life. Said the world is waiting for you to stop playing small. And that's when I started to just put myself out there more. Social media, share the knowledge, get it out there. I need people to go and implement the things that I teach, the things that I help share so that they can grow their wealth, so that they can inspire another generation behind them. Otherwise, you just have a bunch of gurus that are out here trying to sell courses. You'll notice that while I might sell seats and I might sell tickets, I don't necessarily sell courses. It's because the information is readily available on the internet. I think that everybody should have access to a base level of knowledge. Now, whenever you start getting advanced into masterminds and everything else, put a price tag on it. I don't care. But for the basic knowledge to get started to change your life for somebody with willpower, yeah, let's help those people get started. Now, that's the purpose of the workshop. We're going to by the way, if you've been to my workshops before, I want you to understand this is not going to be the high level stuff. We're actually going to be drilled in a couple layers deeper than just the superficial. This is wholesaling. This is buying a rental. This is buying a flip. We're going to be going into a few more advanced practices, leveraging debt, lines of credit, things like that. So I hope that, for any of you that attend, my intention is for you to have, well, have enough confidence when you leave there that day to implement some new strategies so that you can take your business, your investing to another level. All right. I've gotten that out of the way. Now, let's see if there's any messages in chats. Make sure that's open up. All right, cool. If anyone has any projects or any troubleshooting that they would like to discuss, please, feel free. You can drop it in chat on YouTube. You can, if you're on the Zoom, if you have a link from the community, feel free, drop it in the chat on the Zoom. We'll dive into that. And yeah, if you text, then cool. Aside from that, I'd like to, well, really just kind of share some of the stories that I've had over the past decade. There's some that are funny, some that are, frustrating, and some that are tragic. So let's start with something a little funny. It was 2015. We had just bought our second duplex. The first duplex was nicer. We actually had bought that for $67,000. The second one, well, that was the one that I found. And to this day, it is like my baby duplex, right? Because that's the one that I found. And that's the one that, I've went over there and I've scraped my knuckles working on it. And I've shocked myself trying to, wire something or not wire, but how to change a fixture. So that was in essence like almost like my education into becoming a bit of a handyman around that. Fast forward to today, side note, we hire that out. I'm just putting that out there. I was getting calls left and right, and this was a duplex, so one unit and then the other unit. In one unit, we had a tenant that she didn't stay long after we had purchased the property. She just, I tried to work with them for a little while, and after a couple months, I realized like, oh, this person has no intention of really paying their rent. They're just trying to buy time, see how long they can get away with it. Um, Quick note. as a landlord, if you allow a tenant to not pay their rent, the bank will not require you to make your mortgage payment. Did you know that? Yeah, well, it's because they still require you to make your mortgage payment. Don't be stupid. Just because you're generous or you're being walked over doesn't mean the bank's going to allow you to just get away with not paying the note. So, that being said, ended up having to go and get ready to evict them. And if I'm not mistaken, yes, they left before we evicted them. So that was great, And then we go and we put a tenant in place. Then on the other side of this duplex, there's a lady that was there named Miss Brenda. Now, Miss Brenda, I don't know how old she was. I know she wasn't a spring chicken. Every time she saw me, she'd come up gasping, almost out of breath, Mr. Lee, Mr. Lee. As soon as she would pay her rent, I kid you not, there were numerous times she would pay her rent and she would turn around immediately and say, "Can I hold $5?" And then one day I just told her, I said, "Miss Brenda, that's not how this works. See, you pay me rent and I don't loan it back to you. I'm not a payday loan. I'm a landlord. I take this money and I give it to a bank so that I can continue to eventually own this property one day." And it was interesting because Matt, who manages our properties now, he first got his feet wet as a property manager with our stuff. And, you know, if the time ever comes, I'll let Matt tell you how that went the first time around. Um, I will say that we have garnered and gathered some stories over the years. Matt's got some really funny ones, but those are his stories to tell. So I'll let him do that. But I will tell you about Miss Brenda. Eventually, it came to where we needed to part ways professionally. Mainly, there's this rule that I have as a landlord. If you pay, you get to stay. If you don't, then you won't. Well, Miss Brenda decided to find out the hard way that yes, I will evict you. Lo and behold, she actually left before the court date came up. So she turned in her keys, and I'm over there, and I'm just a reminder. And I can laugh about it now because, you know, as embarrassing as it is for me to admit this, I grew up in a very similar way. We had bugs when I was a kid. We grew up in the country, so water bugs, roaches, whatever you want to call them, we had them. You know, uh, so seeing an insect wasn't a big deal for me. Um, but when Miss Brenda left, what she did leave was a shock. Right? She had left this table in her kitchen area. Right? It was just a standard dining table, and there was there was a need to where we needed to get the stuff out. She had left a lot of stuff in there. She had left that dining table, and in the refrigerator, I remember opening up the refrigerator and seeing a bowl, not like a package, like a bowl with some water, and there was some fish, just filleted white perch, you know, just whole, well, head off, right? Just there. Cool. Thank you, Miss Brenda. I appreciate that. And then I look over in one of the cabinets and I see peanut butter. Not one, not two, not three. I saw eight, if not more, jars of peanut butter. They were all opened. Oh my God. I still remember that. Not that I would have kept them if they were unopened, but I damn sure wouldn't keep them if they were open. So I'm going through and I'm looking at everything that has to be done. And I'm even on my Snapchat at this point. I'm like putting it out there on my story. I was like, man, who just writes somebody's name and number on the wall? Well, the phone was right there, right? She still had a landline. So right there, apparently one day she just didn't have a piece of paper, but she had the pen. She just decided to write this guy Cotton. I still remember because I said, somebody call Cotton and tell him to come fix this bullshit. And I'm sitting there and I'm snapping this, going around, pointing all this out. And as I go to move that table, one leg just falls, right? So it wasn't even screwed into the table, just one leg falls. And oh my God, the amount of roaches that came out from under that table. Now that I'm thinking about it, that was really kind of gross because I mean they just ah, didn't know that they hid like that and getting the heebie-jeebies thinking about it because I've seen some nasty things, but seeing those roaches come out was next level. Um, as we go through the rest of it, I mean, it's just standard, trash and everything. So it took a few $100s to get that cleaned up and hauled off. But I still remember Miss Brenda. It's those stories that looking back on a decade of your life and what you have invested besides money, the time that you put in, the blood, the sweat, the tears. Oh my God, the tears, of did I mess up? Have I ruined my family and all the doubt? That's a thing. But also at the same time, the celebrations are also a very real thing, right? Whenever we first paid off our first duplex, because we bought a sixplex, and at that point we're up to like 11 units. Had a great time. 2 years later, after a lot of BS, then we turn around and we sold the sixplex for enough that we actually paid off one of our duplexes. So that was cool. And we still kept the same note that we had. And it just within the next year, the other duplex paid off because there was so much going to principal at that point, very little going to interest. We had flipped that amortization table. Going back to the story, once I had that paid off, that's when I realized, like, oh, snap, we might be onto something here. So over the years, there are those times when you wonder, am I doing this right? Am I even doing this? Or should I get out? I will tell you that whenever you get started into real estate investing, if you get started into real estate investing, you're going to have a certain level of resolve. Not necessarily that you will succeed, just that you'll figure it out along the way. Doesn't matter, you know, what gets thrown at you. Are you going to be resolved to finding solutions? And that served me well over the past 10 years. Sometimes, it's frustrating, to be that committed to see things through. But what do you do? You can either fold and run and tuck tail and, forget that you ever did this, or you can stay the course. As frustrating as it is, as scary as it is sometimes. But I would encourage you to really weigh these things out before you get involved in real estate. And some of these stories I'll be sharing again at the workshop. So I'm not going to give them all away tonight. Let's check the chat, see if anybody has anything that they need. Cool. Now, while I'm waiting for that, I'll tell you another story. A lot of people stay away from C class properties and D class properties because of a perceived tenant profile. I've learned the hard way about not all tenants are good tenants just because they live in expensive homes. And I've also learned, and I've known that for a while, not all tenants that live in lower income housing are bad tenants. Matter of fact, the majority of them are great. They're thankful to be provided with a place that's safe and habitable. This was back in COVID. Carl, which I won't say your last name, but I hope you still look at your old landlord here, every now and then. Because I see you around. I see you out there selling what you selling now. So good on you. Maybe pay the debt collectors that call you regularly requesting that payoff. That being said, this was in COVID, and Carl and his family, they had moved into one of the nicer properties that we owned. when the lockdown happened, he went from every month begging for a couple extra days. Hey, can you help me out? Can you let me pay a little late? Let me pay a little late. To they said I don't have to pay, so I'm not going to. Well, all right. That's cool. How that goes. Um, then they go and put a pool up at the house, which if you have rented a house before and you've put a pool up without your landlord's permission, I'm sure that you can imagine how that conversation goes. It's going to go somewhat to the effect of, hey, take it down, just like it did with him. And then Carl's wife or girlfriend, whatever she is, she gets on social media and starts bashing the mean old landlords who wouldn't let their babies have a pool that their grandparents bought them because, they're locked down and they don't have anything to do. Man, people like that, those are the ones that make you really start to not enjoy the business. Trying to finish that thought without being completely disrespectful and just calling out their names. Um, you know, Another thing that real estate investing has taught me is forgiveness. In a sense that whenever they left, and they left because they got evicted, right? They just weren't in compliance with the lease. They were just taking advantage of everything. And whenever we were able to evict, we did. So now that eviction is, on their background, so that other landlords can be warned, from now until I don't know. As far as I know, evictions stay on your background. But all that to say, the way that they left was just a slap in the face. Hey, I understand that, people don't always leave on the best of terms. The way that they left it, trashed, holes punched in the walls, leaving me, I think, if I'm not mistaken, we spent about $15,000 fixing up once they had left. So it's not all sunshine and rainbows in this business. But that being said, just because you have a more expensive property doesn't mean that you get a better tenant. So there's my lesson for that. Let's see. By the way, Steve, Heather, Richard, any of you, if you are feeling up to it, jump on. Let's chop it up. I'm just sitting here talking to myself for now. And if anybody has anything to talk about, let's talk. And otherwise, I've just about finished with what I was on here to say tonight, and I'll be calling it if nobody has anything that they need. So I'm going to actually give it a second and reply to a message. Go. All right. Yeah, Heather, come on, unmute yourself and let's chop it up a little bit.
Hello, hello.
Hey,
So
how's it
glad
going?
to have been finally been able to get back here.
Been busy.
Yes, yes, life's been a bit crazy. Okay, so my big question right now is I have got this huge list. I think I probably sent it to you of C and D properties that absolutely nobody is interested in. And I'm trying to figure out how to get into the groups, I guess, that would be interested in investing in them so that there can be some movement in these areas. I know that people are buying in the areas, but nobody that I'm talking to is wanting to invest in Moortown, in, Allendale area adjacent, kind of on the edge of Lakeside and Allendale. But there are so many opportunities in there. So do
Yeah.
you have any recommendations? Because I've been working this angle for, oh gosh,
Yeah.
a while now, and I don't know if I should keep pushing this boulder up the hill or not.
So a lot of it really kind of comes down to, do you have any resources that can show you the recent sales in the area just from the tax assessor? Say if you draw a pin around Ford Street, for example, and you bring out the radius half a mile. Do you have a tool like Preqin or Batch, what PropStream, Batch Leads that could show, owner information and then filter out, to where it's only LLCs? That should give you a number of LLCs to then skip trace and reach out to because they already have properties there within that area. So I would say that's probably the lowest hanging fruit as far as finding owners that might be interested in purchasing more there.
Yes, I've done that. Um, Unfortunately, I'm hitting the spot where the sellers don't want to go down and the investors
Yeah.
don't want to buy
Well,
at those levels.
yeah. And that's where, welcome to real estate without
Mhm.
sounding too sarcastic about it. There's a lot of realtors that are sitting in the same situation. There's a lot of investors in the same situation. I've
Okay.
had so many offers turned down that make sense to me based on the numbers. There's an apartment complex, for example. Seller wants considerably more than it's worth. I offered 3.8 for the property. Shut down. They won't look at anything under five right now. Their debt's about to roll. So I've been back in touch and I'll probably do a site visit in the next few weeks, to see if there's any way to justify going up any higher. But a lot of investors, especially the ones that have any intention of staying in the game, they're sticking to their numbers. They'll let the market ride and they'll let owners die and people inherit and then buy it from them because they don't want it. Um, it's just basically investors that are disciplined or playing the long game. And the dumb money is already broke at this point. I think that a lot of investors they were getting too far ahead of themselves when COVID came out and the interest rates were down and we were getting 4% on commercial debt and residential was getting 2.75 or 3% on their debt. That's not the case anymore. And a lot of people are having life changes to where they would love to sell, but they have this inflated idea of what their values are. And a lot of that really comes down to, and you're a very effective communicator. I believe that being able to effectively communicate the future pacing of what happens if you don't sell this home. And if they say absolutely nothing, then great, you don't have a motivated seller.
Okay.
And otherwise, I would start to include other options instead of just, hey, I understand that, ABC 123 real estate would buy this from you today, Mr. or Miss Seller, for $25,000. Would you be willing to sell it? No, absolutely not. I want $500,000. Oh my goodness. At that point, if you know that they're just way out of touch with reality, you're wasting your time to
Okay.
pursue a conversation with them. So sometimes you need to learn when to let them go as well.
Okay. So what I'm hearing you say is keep going, be realistic, continue communicating well, and move on when it doesn't make sense.
Yeah. And then just send a follow up once every couple months or once every month to
Yeah.
say, depending on how motivated they are, right? If they're motivated, however, they can't sell, then look at, sub two or some kind of other creative options. If they're not overly motivated, but subject to a life event that could cause them to become more motivated, I put them in a follow up. Absolutely.
Okay. Okay.
Hope that
Okay.
helps.
Thank you. Yeah, I'll just keep going.
Yeah, yeah. I'll be up there in a couple weeks, so I'll be kind of pounding the streets as well, working to get a few more deals secured. We've got one rental under contract that we secured last week, and I would love to put another four or five, under before the quarter's up. So I've got to get to work.
Okay. Are there any areas in particular you're looking for?
I'm looking all over Bossier right now,
Okay.
and I'm looking for absolute steals in Shreveport. You know, uh,
Yeah.
I would look in Benton, Blanchard, Houghton, all the outlying areas, uh, Morrisport, Blanchard. Yeah. So pretty open. It just really kind of comes down to the deal. I'll even buy a rental for a long-term hold in Shreveport. The numbers have to be very strong. I'm talking almost like a 2% rule to make
Yep.
sense.
Yep. Yep. You'd mentioned that. Okay.
Yeah, just because the debt still, I was quoted at my last one, my last cycle, 7.25 is where we've got our interest rates right now.
Okay.
So I have to be able to reverse engineer, getting this property up to a Section 8 standard, just because that's the minimum that we target. Even if it's not a Section 8 property, we still want to make sure that it will check all the boxes. So to get the repairs done to that condition and then service the debt on top of it and squeeze a little bit of cash flow, it's just a simple reverse engineer for us.
Yep. Okay.
Yeah. But keep me posted. I'm always happy to hear about it.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Let's see. Checking through. Did you have any other questions, by the way, Heather?
I don't think so right now, but I will let you know if
Okay.
they come up.
All right. Perfect. And let's see. Richard, in a double close transaction, when the assignment fee is hidden from the end buyer, my for some reason is trying to keep that in there. There we go. From the end buyer, is it immoral to also hide that fee from the seller as well? Morality is it's a very subjective thing, right? For some people, holding a door for someone, they expect to be told thank you because that's what they would do. Other people, they don't hold the door, they don't say thank you because they're in their own world. They don't feel like it's immoral, right? It's just their way of doing things. And who are we to discuss what's moral or immoral? That's we're putting our personal beliefs out there onto other people. I know that probably got a lot more deep than you anticipated or you wanted. I wanted to give you that context because this is where it comes down to. If you feel like you're making too much money, then you have to ask yourself, did I truly treat this person fair in the transaction? Right? And I say that because let's say that there's this 93-year-old retiree that's living on a fixed income and they come over here and you're able to pick up their house for $10,000. And then tomorrow you know that you've got an end buyer that will buy that house for $110,000. You're going to make $100,000 right there. Miss Edna over here is going to go into a home and she's not going to have much for her life or what's left of it, right? And let's say that you feel a twinge of guilt about that. That's going to be your personal feeling, your beliefs, your morals that are guiding you on that. There are other people, you can call them sociopaths or anything else, that don't feel a thing about it. They sit here and say, you know what? I made a good investment. Cool. Now, all that to say, if you feel guilty about something, maybe revise the deal, look at that. But if you don't necessarily feel guilty about it, more so what you're really facing is pushback from people that don't want you to make money. If it's a seller that doesn't want you to make anything, they just want somebody to come and sell a house for them for free. Like I told Heather earlier, welcome to real estate. There's a lot of agents that have to deal with that too. Now, if you're sitting here and there's classically a rule of thumb that I've implemented that I've had for other people. If it's more than $5,000 or $10,000 assignment, then you double close. All right. Mainly because anything more than that, and obviously, a seller will say, "What do you mean? I could have made $25,000 more." Well, I refuse to sign, and then next thing you know, you lose the deal. Also, on the same note, the end buyer, I know some investors out there. They do not want a wholesaler to make more than $5,000 a deal because what did they do? They knocked on the door. They had a conversation. They don't see the value in paying a wholesaler. Well, that's why people like me with the loans that I do, like I'll do transactional funding. So where you would call me and say, Lee, I've got this deal. I'm going to make $25,000. And I would say, man, congratulations. That's awesome. He's like, yeah, but I don't want the end buyer to know it. They would try to cut me down to where I'm only going to make $5,000. Like, well, $20,000 is a hell of a swing. So how much do you need? Well, I'm buying it for 50 and I'm assigning it for 75. So you would come to me and I'd say, okay, well, for 2 points, right? That's classic going rate is 1 to 2 points of the purchase price. So if you follow me on that, that's $1,000 on a $50,000 purchase. For $1,000 plus a processing fee, which is going to include the wire and everything else and the instructions that we have to do, basically the time of doing that, then we would provide you with the funds to do the purchase for the $50,000 and then close for the $75,000. Because at that point, you're not necessarily hiding, you're double closing, and you have purchased this property for the $50,000 as you agreed to from that seller. And now you're just simply fulfilling your agreement to sell that property to the end buyer for the $75,000. I hope that that gives you some insight as to why or when to double close. But I wouldn't necessarily think that it's a matter of morality. I think it's just more so a matter of you know people don't necessarily understand that sometimes you need to pay a specialist. Let's see. Double close, is it hidden from the seller? Yes, because it's going to be two separate HUDs. That means that you're going to have the one purchase agreement over here, the HUD, the deed, everything's going to get recorded over here into your company or your name. And now you are the owner, even though it's only 5 minutes, but now it's a completely different HUD that's going to come out and it's going to have all those numbers, the prorations and everything else is going to come out. So hopefully that gives you a little bit there. Oh, Steve, all right, congratulations. Let's see that you did get your property under contract. Nice. Give you access to the home, meeting with the contractors tomorrow morning at 10:11. That's awesome, man. Congratulations. So it seems like you've got your first property on the ball. And what, last week you were afraid to pull the trigger. So you know what? You took the step. Congratulations. I'm looking forward to hearing how that goes for you as you go through that. Let's see. I'm trying to bring up my chat a little bit more here. All right, cool. All right. Well, does anybody have anything else that that you have as far as questions or comments, concerns, anything that we can really kind of work through for you today? Next week, I'm going to have to double check. I might not have real estate after dark for the next 2 weeks because again, I'll be in Shreveport next week and I'll be returning on the 23rd, 24th, something like that. Um, so yeah, real estate after dark might just do some live streams here or there. While I'm in town, I do plan to attend, a meetup here and there. There's one Esbria. I'll actually be speaking at their meetup, and that's going to be on the 21st. And then, of course, the workshop. And I might do a random meetup networking thing that I host, depending on how things are going on, like Thursday or Friday next week. We'll see. All right. Well, if yeah, Heather, I'll send you over the details on that as well. Also, check my page because you're in the school community. So you guys do have a promotion on the tickets, but everybody, I've opened it up in case you didn't see that. Everybody has access to general admission tickets for the workshop on the 19th for free. Yeah, so I'm going to get that post put together here shortly, publish it, and then send it out. In the meantime, hope you all have a fantastic weekend and a very productive week. I've got a couple loan applications that I need to process. Probably not going to do it tonight if I'm being honest. I'll get around to it tomorrow. And I've got a few capital partners that are looking to put money to work. So if you are looking for capital for a project, let's talk about it. Let's see what kind of rates we can get and how we can make it happen. In the meantime, please reach out. Have a great week and take care, everybody.
All right. Thank you, Lee. Good job.
Thanks, man. Congratulations again.
Thank you.